I believe in people, and cheesy as it may sound, I really believe that people are a company's biggest asset. And in my mind, I think the talent acquisition function is not only critical, but it's the lifeblood of any organization, whether you're successful or not.
Don't conduct your analysis in isolation because data is so incredibly powerful.
Not defending just the tribe, but defending the organization.
Those creative people that you really want to keep empowered, keep excited, keep motivated, keep thinking.
A good experience pays dividends down the line.
Stereotypes tend to break down in proximity.
Welcome to We're Only Human, a podcast about human resources, business, technology, and the workplace. My name is Ben Eubanks, your host, and I'm so glad you're here.
Hey everyone, it's Ben Eubanks, host of We're Only Human. I'm so glad you're here with us. Looking forward to a tremendous conversation. I have a great friend here with me, Kelly Burlage from Lineage. We're going to be talking about recruiting, how to create better impact for our candidates we're serving, how to think about what's next, some of the big challenges in the space, all of that good stuff in about 35 minutes or so. So Kelly, welcome. So glad you're here.
Thanks for having me, Ben. As always, a great adoration for you and the work that you do. And thanks for having me.
That feeling is mutual, my friend. You're doing some great things over at Lineage, and I want to hear from you some of the perspectives you have on the market. I had a chance recently to see you in person, which was so great at the RPO Association conference in Chicago, and we were chatting about some of the things you're working on, some of the stuff you're bringing to the table, your perspectives there on the panel were appreciated by the entire audience. So I was like, let's get that in front of some of the amazing people that are listening to the podcast and let them hear just how great Kelly is. So before we get to some of the good stuff, we're going to talk about, would you take a minute and tell the audience more about who you are and what you do, please?
Sure thing. So Kelly Burlage, right now, I currently serve as the Vice President of Global Talent Acquisition at Lineage. If you don't know who Lineage is, which most people don't, we are the leading company in the temperature-controlled logistics supply chain solutions, so cold storage warehouse. I think if you've ever eaten anything refrigerated or frozen, chances are it's come from one of our facilities. And in my role, I have the pleasure of being responsible for leading a gigantic, fantastic team that's all responsible for attracting, retaining top talent worldwide that really just helps Lineage staff our locations with skilled professionals that are all committed to our company's mission. But great to be here. Thanks, Ben.
Awesome. I'm so excited. I've had lots of good conversations over the past few years on the side. And so good to get something on the record here and talk about some of the things that you're seeing, because I think you have some good insights for us there. So before we get into some of the things I want to dive into, again, I've got this like laundry list over here and it's getting longer every time I stop and think about it. Why TA, of all the things you've been doing, why did you settle on working in the recruiting and talent acquisition space?
Funny. So I love this question. If you ever listened to Simon Sinek and the why behind his books and some of the reasons why, I think the starting with the why is really important. I had a mentor earlier in my career who I sat on the board with at Disrupt HR Chicago. Her name was Nicole Desane. And I remember one time she said, "You don't have a why statement?" And I thought, what the heck is a why statement? And I sat there for a minute trying to figure out what is my why and why TA and why me. And I thought about it for a long time. And where I landed was, from a TA perspective, I always think, simply put, I believe in people. And cheesy as it may sound, I really believe that people are a company's biggest asset. And in my mind, I think the talent acquisition function is not only critical, but it's the lifeblood of any organization, whether you're successful or not. So in my mind, hiring the right recruiters to create what I would refer to as a strategic talent acquisition team is really the foundation of how a company can be successful or not. And so seeing the impact that talent acquisition has on your EBITDA, on your revenue, on your company engagement, on your culture, on your quality of hire, and then all the metrics that we kick around from a TA perspective, in my mind, can either wreak havoc on your engagement or create a really infectious stickiness that people want to be a part of. And so for me, that's where the excitement came from. And that's where the why came from. It's all centered around being people-centric.
Okay. So some great pieces there that I think are already lessons learned about focusing on the people, thinking through those things. I want to ask you a big question just to start us off. What do you think is the biggest challenge facing TA leaders today?
So I've been to quite a few different in-person meetings and events, sessions, and I think the biggest one that continues to pop up that I can relate to is probably not just from a talent acquisition leader, but from any leader in general, is really the notion of artificial intelligence, generative AI. And in my mind, that's probably the one that people are the most cautious about and the one that's top of mind for not just leaders, but talent acquisition leaders.
We're definitely hearing the same thing. It's a theme at every conference. It's a focus of almost every conversation. Something touches on it. I had a surreal moment yesterday when my daughter's trying to finish some questions for school for class, and it's 10 o'clock and I'm over it. I'm ready to go to bed and stop helping with homework. And I'm like, I'm going to punch in and get an answer from ChatGPT. She said, "Oh, I already did." Oh gosh, my kids are using it for school already. I thought it was something new to them. They're already like neck deep in it. Oh yeah, here's the way that I asked the question so it doesn't sound like it's written by an expert. It's written by a ninth grader. Okay, they're teaching me something about their approach to this. People were talking about if we're using it both personally and professionally. So I think that's definitely a conversation here. That's broad though. Is it AI is going to replace us? AI is going to take over parts of our job. AI is going to do all these things. What do you think we should be thinking about as TA, whether TA leaders or even the recruiters in the audience, more line level, doesn't matter. What do you think we should be thinking about when it comes to this? How should we be approaching it? What should be our mindset?
First of all, I don't think it's going away. I think from a leadership perspective of really how we should be viewing it is we should look at it as the ability to be innovative and look at AI as an enabler versus looking at it as an obstacle. There's a woman that I heard speak at a conference recently through our Leading Women Executives program, and she got up and talked a ton about her research that she's done within the AI space. Her name's Dr. Roshni Avindin. She shared a ton of helpful business cases around how specifically artificial intelligence through the lens of TA or HR can be an enabler to do your job more effectively. And she talks a ton about how the research that she has seen and how I think all of us as humans, you included, Ben, and myself, see a great deal of opportunities for AI to be an enabler for you to make your job more efficient, to check your grammar, to check your punctuation. But what they don't see it being as an enabler is to replace emotional intelligence, creativity, we'll say complex decision making. They asked a lot of questions like, would you trust AI to trade for you, market and pick your trades and run your portfolio? Or would you trust human intuition and the ability to take those complex trends that AI can produce and package that with a human to then determine what the right path is for you to help advance your finance portfolio? And I thought it was really interesting. The notion that AI can replace humans, there will be tasks and things that can be replaced, but I do think it will evolve in terms of the skills needed for someone to thrive in their jobs and hopefully take a lot of the mundane work that's more repetitive and allow us to still as humans handle the ethical considerations, things around interpersonal skills that are really necessary for leaders. So when you think about the future evolution of what AI will do, my suspicion is that it will really force to the surface things that are so critically important around soft skills, around things that right now are important, but we really rely on other things to make a leader successful. And I think the enhancement and the replacement will be solved for by pushing those soft skills to the surface.
Speaking of speakers, I was at an event last week in New York and spoke after a Harvard professor who was sharing some data that they had produced. And one of the things that stood out is they looked at the demand for certain types of skills, like math skills or communication skills were the two that he put on there. And over time, the emphasis on people that are really good at computing and calculating everything else has steadily trended down. But the demand for people who are great at communicating and connecting has steadily trended up at the same time. They crossed over a couple of years ago and they continued in those directions. And he said, the biggest takeaway from this is the human side of this, communication, connection, empathy, respect for each other, like those sorts of things. You can't just hand those off to an algorithm because we see a higher demand from people for those things and just the jobs. You can't automate those parts of it either, right? The AI can't handle that. That was one of the things that I saw there. And it reminded me, I'm going to cite that as I'm writing the next version of the book, because when I talk about the human skills model of creativity, compassion, and collaboration and critical thinking, you mentioned several of those in your answer there a few minutes ago. And those things all matter more in a world with more AI and automation in them because there are things we can't automate And there are things that humans intuitively do better than any sort of programming could.
Well, and I think too, Ben, an example that happens to me all the time, and I'm sure this happens to you, is people call you and they say, "Hey, I'm looking for a job. Can you help me?" You're like, "Oh my gosh, yes, let me help you." And I think where I see AI being an enabler is, gosh, wouldn't that be great if I could take their LinkedIn profile and parlay it with some prompts that add recent experience or certifications. And then they make this beautifully crafted resume that when I started from scratch before, it would take me an hour and a half to help someone. And now that piece is done for me because it's crafted and perfectly beautiful and has all the things that I want in it. But then you think, okay, now take this and sell yourself. It can give you prompts, but the reality is an authentic communication and conversation where you're talking to someone about how they sell what you just created. I don't know that could ever be replicated.
So I tell this story. You'll appreciate this. I don't think you've heard this before, so you can appreciate the novelty of it hearing it for the first time. Years ago, I was recruiting and I made an offer to a gentleman named Bill. Bill was 72 years old, the oldest candidate I ever recruited and brought on. And I was so excited. And he said no. I was like, I thought this was a done deal. What's going on? He said, my wife said I can't take the job. Okay, what's going on here? So she said no. So I said, okay, bring her into the office. I want to chat with her a little bit. So she came in. I said, okay, here, look, this is where Bill would sit. And this is the team he'd be working on, and showed her around the office. And she said, this is all nice, but it's still no. What's the problem, if you don't mind me asking? She said, I'm worried about him driving home because it's getting dark early and his vision's not very good. I'm worried about him driving home. I said, okay, what if he came to work an hour earlier and then got home before it started getting dark? She was like, you mean he can do that? Yeah, yes, ma'am. Absolutely. That'd be okay. And she turns to him and wags her finger in his face and says, Bill, you better not ever leave here. And I love that story because there's not an algorithm in the world that could do that could have that connection, that can have that relationship. You talked about that as you're talking about Lineage at the beginning, about the strategic function that cares about people, like those things, the differentiators, the people that really connect with others. That's what you look for in a great recruiting team. And what's going to stand out against some of the brute force that an algorithm can bring. It doesn't have that level of finesse to really connect to someone and get them to a yes, I would argue.
Absolutely. No, that's a great example.
Okay. So we're hearing all these things about AI in the space. You're talking about some of the data you've heard about around leaning on the human skills and some of those sorts of things. If someone's out there and they're an HR leader or a talent acquisition leader and they're getting pressure from their company, hey, we should get some AI. I saw in the news, our competitors are using these things. We should be getting some. Any advice for those leaders and be getting pressure on that on what they should do in response, either how to think about use cases or how to approach that as a problem to be solved, or even how to negotiate on that if they're not sure they do need it? Anything you'd tell those leaders? Because I'm hearing from some of them that are getting that pressure from outside of their function for that, and they're a little bit lost for what to do.
I think it's a great question. I think it really begs the question of how and what specific problem that you think you're trying to solve. So from my perspective, the best advice I would be able to give somebody is the advice I'm taking, which is completely immersing myself and educating myself on learning more about it, experimenting with AI and the different types of technologies that are out there, how it works, what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and really restarting until the innovation aligns with your organizational goals and objectives. So as an example, one of the things we're really faced with here is really impacting our hiring velocity. So from that perspective, not just how long did it take someone to start a job at Lineage, it's all those little pieces in between. How long did it take a manager to review a resume? And how long did it go from X, Y, Z? And looking at all those little subsets. And so artificial intelligence will allow us to look at the data analytics around where are some of those bottlenecks and how might we approach from a change management perspective around getting managers to be quicker in terms of their responses to help close that velocity gap and help us get people through the door more quickly. And I think if you can really hone in on what are some of your big organizational objectives going into the next year or 2 years, and then you can find specific solutions within AI to help solve that, then you're really closing the gap. As an example, I hear a lot about Microsoft Copilot. And what I hear about it is, gosh, I was on vacation for a week. And when I came back, Copilot was able to organize my emails, prioritize it, and summarize what I think I needed to know. So think about jumping back into your week and being able to just quickly get a summary version and a Cliff Notes version of everything you need to know. So at least you could tackle your day more appropriately instead of doing what most of us have been doing, which is going through all of your hundreds of emails and trying to figure out which ones require your attention. So I think if you can start to look for ways that you can insert efficiency, but then tie it to where the company is going and learning and educating yourself, and do it through a variety of things. Do it through people in your network. Do it through courses. Coursera and those types of online courses offer, whether it be free or very inexpensive courses that you can take just to start to familiarize yourself with what's out there, what would work, and how it would fit into your personal or your professional needs.
I think that's a tremendous set of recommendations there, and good advice for anyone listening in, that when you heard my question, you're like, hey, that's me. You raised your hand out there. Probably didn't raise your hand wherever you are. That might be fun or weird. You got me in your earbuds there and people are looking at you. But either way, raise your hand, because I think that's a good piece of advice on educating, really getting deep in that, not just wondering, waiting, and hoping, but really leaning in and taking charge and taking some control of your destiny to that end, I think is a great recommendation. And I love your focus there on where can we make these things easier, whether it is coming back from vacation, goodness, that's wild, or it's just something day to day we're doing in TA right now that's a routine, rote task, but may not be adding a lot of value. We just have to do it because it's part of our job. Let's get those things off our plate so we can spend more time building relationships, proving the value back to the business. You talked about hiring metrics earlier. You mentioned that. Like all those sorts of things are good uses of our time. And if we had a choice, we'd spend more time on that, less on some of the more mundane aspects of the TA function, if we had to call it that.
Absolutely.
All right. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit, because one of the things that I'm curious about, we just finished a big piece of research. I've been writing a lot about the learning and the skills side of that, but a part I haven't tapped into very much is around the talent ability side. And what's fun to me from that conversation is if you ask an HR leader about talent ability, it's one thing. If you ask a learning leader, it's about skilling people up and moving them up. If you ask the person who's in TA, usually it's, hey, we're looking inside to hire when we're opening requisitions, things like that. So I'd love to hear from you, anything you have to share there. So what is the emphasis on this? Should it be a priority for HR leaders or TA leaders right now when it comes to hiring internally? You talked about hiring velocity, which is great, but that's usually outside. What can we do for some of the people who are inside the firewall and help grow them up? What are your thoughts?
So I think there's a couple things. Number one, I love the concept. And if you've ever heard it, it's the difference between fresh eyes and wise eyes. I love the concept and the debate between what's a better hire, right? And hiring someone that's been with the organization would be your quote unquote wise eyes, and how integrated they understand, what their level of political savviness, if they know how to get things done within the organization, which has been sometimes when you join a company, that's your demise. You might come to a company and just crash and burn because you haven't figured out how to navigate conversations and understand the culture on how work gets done. And sometimes that's your demise. Now, on the other hand, the fresh eyes argument, isn't it great to get a new perspective, someone to come in with ideas around process improvements that have been tried and true for your competition, or someone that comes in that has a different competitive edge because they come from a technology company that is trying to do the things that you're looking to do, but maybe they're a couple of years ahead. We've approached it that we haven't put any goals or metrics around which avenue is better, but we've really tried to approach it that in a lot of times our internal candidates have been able to hit the ground running much more quickly because they do understand what they're getting into when they come here, what it's like to work here, and how the values that we put up on our website, although values that are on our website, we really do live and breathe them. And so coming in as a servant leader and building trust, being bold are things that we wear as a badge of honor. And so someone that already knows that might have a little bit more of a higher probability of success at our company. And quite frankly, we've seen a lot of success with picking up high potentials through the 9-box exercise or through the talent development review process. So in partnership with learning, and then picked up those people and moved them to roles or opportunities or stretch assignments where we really have a need for a particular skill set. And it's been highly effective for us. So I think from that perspective, we've seen that when you hire from the outside, a lot of times that productivity or to get somebody ready and moving into a role, if you're talking about our commercial organization or specifically on the sales side, usually it's 6 months to 18 months before they're really in it and they understand how things work. Now, if you move somebody over internal, they might have a little bit of a larger learning curve, learning maybe to be a hunter versus a farmer on the commercial side. However, they know how to get things done and who to talk to. And sometimes they're at a little bit more of an advantage because of that. So we have navigated and we have experimented with both and seen great success with internal mobility programs where we're taking high potentials and moving them. I would say we've also looked at how can we focus on a specific segment. So as an example here at Lineage, a big, huge part of our success is our supervisors here at Lineage have the largest number of direct reports, so the largest number of touch, so scope. And we've seen an opportunity to really invest in that particular population. So we've spent the better part of the last year developing what I would refer to as more of an onboarding program to really immerse people into how do you make sure they do their jobs effectively? And then how do you give them all of those soft skill type trainings in a way that they feel excited and engaged? And by doing so, it does increase productivity. It does increase engagement. And so those were some of the things that we feel are incredibly fundamental to the success of our company. So whether it's upskilling or continuing to invest in all of our populations, that's going to be the recipe for success at Lineage.
That last piece you mentioned around really being intentional about developing them and helping them succeed and giving them a path to what great looks like. One of my good friends when she was at, I believe, Accenture, she was the head of manager enablement. So how do we help managers across the organization be good managers? And I had her on the podcast recently, Maria Scott. You can dig back and find that episode. But the conversation, she said there's a big lesson learned that she had was that so few of us actually take the time to tell supervisors, to tell managers what good looks like here at our organization. We assume they know because they have the title, because they have experience, because they've been in the industry. We assume all these things, but they may know what good looks like at the other company they were at, but we haven't told them what it looks like here. And by telling them that, you eliminate a lot of uncertainty. You give them a target to shoot for. They know what their performance standards are. Like, you're giving them all these gifts just by saying, this is what we expect of you as a leader. And so some of the things you're talking about there around putting training together, helping them know these skills matter, you're signposting for those people for your own team. This is what matters. This is what good looks like here. If you're not sure, refer back to the agenda, but on this training, because it's going to tell you exactly what we're looking for from you. And I think that's so important.
And think about the feeling of feeling really invested. And think about the times in your career, Ben, where people put you in a role, but they didn't really train you on how to do that job. And you go from maybe an individual contributor to a manager, and you're thinking, all I know is based on my last manager, what that experience was like. And if it was a bad experience, you might know what not to do, but you might not really know what to do the right way. And so we're really trying to take a proactive stance at arming managers and supervisors and leaders with the tools to have an uncomfortable conversation, the tools to deal with anything that happens in our locations, and really help enable more of a uncomfortable conversation so people can have the ability to be promoted and have uncomfortable conversations. That's the name of the game.
I'm going to go ahead. I mentioned Maria's episode. I'm going to link to this in the show notes for everybody who's listening in here. I'll probably send it to you too, Kelly. I talked to the CHRO of Baylor University recently. They talk about some of their own supervisory training pieces and how they put that together. And it's just so much of that resonates with me because of what you're saying here. There's some good parallels in that and some other ideas about how they approach that. So I'll make sure and link out in the show notes for everybody for some further listening, further reading, further exploration of the topic. So I had one more good question for you before we start wrapping up, Kelly. And it's, what is something that your team has accomplished that you're proud of?
There is actually, and I'm not just saying this because they might hear this, but there is actually a very long list. I would say one of the biggest things we've accomplished is being viewed more as a business partner than an order taker. So when I say that, is Lineage philosophy here is very much of the HR doesn't really operate as around. They're not the police. They are the true business partner here at Lineage. They're the third leg of the stool per se. So you've got operations, you've got sales, and you've got HR involved in every conversation to make sure that the people aspect is the center point of everything we do. And I think that extends to my talent acquisition team. When I say I'm super protective of them because they've done such an incredible job, but they have created a reputation and a brand here at Lineage that is showing up as a business partner. So doing quarterly business reviews where we're showing metrics and market insights and showing how we can change the game and make their lives easier by key metrics and deliverables, and creating a really healthy level of competition between the different regions to show things like hiring velocity and where we're finding the best candidates, and getting better relationships with some of our strategic partners that we have, whether it be refugee partnerships or second chance recidivism programs or military expansions. And so we've got this great relationship with our HR partners, with our business leaders to help us really blow those programs out and really make a more meaningful impact. And my team, by the work that they did, created this wonderful brand on their own by demonstrating value and keeping it people and finding great people for their roles. So that's what I would say I'm most proud of.
That's great. It's like seeing your kids, not your kids, but seeing your kids grow up and be great adults. That's the long-term vision that many parents have. And that's what you're like, they have really arrived. They've come far. They've hit that level of being sought out for the value they bring.
Yes.
And so I think that's a really exciting, I love that answer. That's so great.
Yeah. They no longer say like my recruiter, they say my recruiter. They're the hiring leaders are very protective of their recruiting team, which is exactly how you'd want it to be. It's no longer finger pointing. It's very much of a we conversation, which if you can get there, you're winning in the TA space.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, goodness. So many good things, so many good ideas, insights, tips, and advice from this conversation. If someone wants to connect with you, Kelly, is LinkedIn the best way, or is there another path you'd want them to connect and follow you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is probably the best way to reach me. I actually respond pretty quick on LinkedIn, and I'm out posting and sharing, and certainly my engagement is relatively high. So looking forward to connect.
Perfect. I'll make sure and drop that link into the comments for the episode, the show notes. So all you have to do is click over in your podcast player, connect with Kelly there, let her know you heard her on the podcast, and I know she'll appreciate it, and she responds as she said. So there you go. So Kelly, this has been a blast. I want to laugh and cut up with you, but you brought some really serious and helpful things here that I think the audience is going to appreciate. It's going to help make them better. Whether they're an HR leader trying to partner with a business, some good things there, or someone in TA specifically, some of the things you shared around mobility and others are so helpful. So thank you for joining me and spend some time here today.
You're very welcome. And thanks for letting me wear a Johnny Cash t-shirt instead of getting dressed up.
Hey, you know what? If the audience can see the Johnny Cash t-shirt, your cool points are already high. It would go even higher. Thank you so much, Kelly. To everybody else out there, thank you for joining us on We're Only Human. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you so much for joining me on the show today. I'm honored to have you as a listener. If you enjoyed this episode, please take 10 seconds to rate it at iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Also, if you know a friend that could benefit from today's conversation, please pass it their way. After all, a rising tide lifts all ships. To see show notes, sponsor information, and our full show archives, visit onlyhumanshow.com.